Now You're Playing with Power. Written by Short Storytelling. Read by Short Storytelling. Zelda. You might know a person with that name. I even had a great aunt with that name that I remember fondly. For the majority of the world, it's the name of a video game series. The irony is Zelda is the name of the princess, not the hero. She's the person the hero sets out to rescue. Without a doubt, the Zelda series is my personal favorite series of video games, and this is about my favorite memory of that series. I was 12 years old when the first game in the series, The Legend of Zelda, came out. I didn't grow up poor, but we weren't wealthy either, just middle class, which used to be a thing. The game was released on the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, which I did not own. My friend did have an NES, and it was at his house that I first experienced Zelda. The Zelda games have always been about adventure. Up until this point, most adventure games were about typing out instructions and were, at best, interactive fiction. Games like King's Quest and Zork. Those games required using your imagination and trying to figure out how to progress the story. In King's Quest, it often meant using the keyboard arrow keys to fall down a staircase and die. And in Zork, it meant having your lantern burn out and being eaten by a grue in the dark. Zelda was a true graphical adventure. You could see the enemies on the screen, and you had agency and control as you wove between them, stabbing them with your sword on the way. It gave you adventure, with a sense of power. Shigeru Miyamoto was the primary game designer for the original Legend of Zelda game. He wrote about designing the game after pretend adventures he had growing up. Exploring a forest, making up enemies to fight, swinging a stick around like a sword, and saving the princess. That experience came through completely to me. I was young enough to still have make-believe adventures, taking shortcuts home from school that took 3 times longer, and having to explore various ruins that I trekked through, cow fields and people's yards. I have a vivid memory of a large fallen tree on the edge of a small creek, its roots making a most excellent fort for a home base. The first Zelda game was the first time I really felt that sense of adventure from a game. Exploring, not knowing if more powerful enemies were around the corner, stumbling upon a fairy who healed my wounds, burning down a random bush and being surprised by a cave entrance underneath. It's the kind of unforgiving game that doesn't hand you the details but forces you to discover them on your own. Now, playing this kind of game at a friend's house has to be one of the worst ways to experience it. It's a solo experience, so someone is forced to sit and get bored watching you as you try to discover a new world. You know you have limited time, and this sprawling adventure is too grand to discover in 20 minutes, but you do it anyway. You do your best to experiment, try new things, ignore your friend's brother telling you how badly you're doing, and finally die listening to the disheartening music as your avatar spins in dramatic death throes. It isn't long before boredom sets in, and you stop playing to find something you both can play. My friend moved away later that year, and it was a couple of more years before I was finally gifted my own Nintendo and able to forge ahead on my own adventure to find Zelda. I prepared for my adventure this time. I knew the lore, I read the manual that came with it, absorbing the story of the hero whose name was Link, and I needed to defeat the evil Ganon to rescue the Princess Zelda. This was before the internet, and gathering lore and maps was its own quest. I remember reading through gaming magazines, looking for tips and cheats, keeping a small notepad and pen in my pocket to write such gems down for later use. I studied maps, using guides of information my friends had, begging to borrow them. We planned the mission together, my new friend at the time offering suggestions of his own, helping me plan a route that would give me the best chances of success. We bonded over the shared adventure, daydreaming of defeating the powerful enemies, each of us empowered enough to complete the adventure on our own terms. It was like searching for a treasure, armed with a map, following the clues, depending on your own skills to win the day, find the treasures, and save the princess. It wasn't a task that was diminished at all by having a guide, because I still had to do the work myself. This was an adventure on my own terms, a test of my abilities, and of my worthiness. A lot of that time of my life is a blur. Those were formative years of my life, and there was a lot going on outside of my video game interests. The real world intruded, as it so often does, and my own skills were not up to the required tasks. Even armed with maps and strategies, I wasn't able to win the game. I did achieve a success in my own way, battling to the heart of the adventure, but not yet equipped enough to complete it. It was another year or two before I was able to succeed. I remember it being a lazy summer afternoon. By then, I'd become quite familiar with the game, memorizing all the dungeon locations and knowing how fun just adventuring could be, even without a goal in mind. Bored, with not much to do and no responsibilities left for the day, I put the game in and decided to try finishing it. The final dungeon, known as Death Mountain, was someplace I'd been before, but it was a giant maze, and finding my path throughout had always been my struggle. Something was different this time. I did my usual wandering from room to room, struggling to defeat the enemies I found. This time, I began to understand the rooms. The layout made sense. The strange transitions through secret tunnels to new places, finding the cracked walls to exploit for a new room, finally finding the path to challenge the boss. I don't remember the fight, just snippets. Even playing it again now, that fight is a quick experience. Raising my rebuilt Triforce of Courage, slashing around blindly, trying to expose Ganon and stun him before finally piercing him with the silver arrows. Destroyed with a satisfying pop, I picked up his Triforce of Power from the pile of dust that was all that remained of him. I made my way to the next room and I finally rescued the princess. I get goosebumps now, just remembering the experience. That familiar tingling, a physical reaction to a sense of overwhelming wonder and achievement. Listening to the fanfare and watching the credits for the game scroll up my screen, I had done it, on my own. No one was there to witness my achievement, and in all honesty, I think it meant more to me because of that. In a way, that was a big milestone in my life. I grew up more than a little right then, and I felt part of my childhood passing on, replaced with a new mantle of adulthood. Something that hung heavy upon my shoulders. I've played all of the mainline Zelda games since then. They all give me a similar sense of wonder and discovery. As I got older, I appreciated the challenge more, needing to beat the game without any kind of guide or map. As I got older, I became more interested in the games than the adventures. I became more of an adult and less of a child, enjoying the exploration. My point in all of this is not that The Legend of Zelda is the best game. It isn't. It's not even the best Zelda game, in my opinion. But in that moment, in that time in my life, it was the best game for me. It was what I needed to see that I was growing up, that the world was changing for me. And some people don't understand video games, what their appeal is and why others pour their energy into them. I think I may have been part of the first generation to experience them like this. To have them be a self-contained rite of passage. They may be a virtual experience, but it's no different than being moved by a movie or a book or by a chance meeting with a childhood hero. These stories mean something to those of us that experience them. They're part of our childhood, and more importantly, they mark a transition to our adulthood. They represent a loss of innocence. Not a dramatic mark of tragedy that forces us to grow up, but a voluntary journey. A challenge that we take on to tell ourselves we're no longer children, but ready to face the world on our own terms.